Tobin, can you hear us? I'm going to say no. The live stream can hear us. Okay. Okay, good. That just sounded funny. Tobin, can you hear us now?
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order here. I got approval of tonight's agenda. I do have a recommendation to read that the agenda be amended to allow delegations registered to provide comment under item 7.1, delegations public question period regarding item 9.4.1, short-term accommodation update, to speak following presentation of a report by staff and prior to the voting being taken, and that the agenda be approved and amended, as amended. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Coburn and Councillor Scholdice. And we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Is carried. All right, the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, the culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and the Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen, the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on the land and live in peace and friendship as it's the First Peoples. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Any member has a declaration of pecuniary interest to declare? See none. You can declare at any time if needed. On to our announcements, council announcements. Does anyone wish to make an announcement? Mayor Carlton.
Thank you. Just a few things that have been happening recently. At the last county council meeting, Kim Wingrove stated that the Intelligent Community Forum, ICF, had announced at their virtual conference, which was hosted by Economic Development Australia and the Economic Developers Association of Canada, that Grey County was named one of the world's Smart 21 communities of 2023. And to say a little about that, the Smart 21 announcement is the first stage in ICF's annual Intelligent Community Awards cycle. And based on Intelligent Community Index questionnaires submitted by communities large and small from around the world, ICF they select 21 finalists with the potential to become one of the forum's top 7 intelligent communities of the year. So Grey County is part of that at this point, which I think is pretty great. And I'd also like to mention on February 28th, CAO Fletcher and I met with the CAO and Mayor of Town of South Bruce Peninsula for the purposes of getting to know each other and to find out, are there areas where we could collaborate together? And we know that one of the things is we have a water agreement for Oxenden that will be coming up for renewal. And CAO Jones was going to look into some things and get back to us with anything else that we might potentially collaborate on with them. So I felt they were very pleased that we had reached out to them, and I think it's a good thing to reach out to our neighboring municipalities. And then from 1 to 2 today, Samantha Buchanan, our treasurer, and I were on Politically Speaking with David Shearman, answering questions about budget, the Kemble Arena, bag tagging, crease, and various other things. So if anybody wants to watch Rogers Cable TV or it's Rogers on the internet, I forget the actual thing, but you can watch that for an hour if you have nothing else to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Carl. Councillor Coburn.
As today is International Women's Day, I would just like to wish a happy International Women's Day to all of the wonderful women we have on staff, my female colleagues on council, the wonderful women we have here prepared to speak and delegate, and all of the women in our communities.
Thanks for that, Councillor Coburn. That is, you're 100% there. We need to appreciate the people that are around, especially the ladies that give us a hand in everything we do every day. So thank you for that. Anybody got anything else? Everybody else is good? All right, public hearings, we have nil. Delegations, public question period, 7.1. Items on the agenda, I'll just read the note that we have here. Any person who wishes to appear before council regarding an item on the agenda shall make a written application to the clerk by 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting. To register, it's www.georgianbluffs.ca/delegations or call the clerk's office 519-376-2729, extension 603. We do have 2 registered delegates to speak tonight under 9.4.1. And other than that, we have nil in the question period. Correspondence, we have nil. Staff reports, infrastructure and building. We do have a recommendation that council receive for information, accept the annual drinking water report attached to Appendix A. Before I go to a mover and a seconder on this, I would like to have the CAO introduce the 2 folks from Auckland.
Thank you, Chair Pringle. And generally, you will receive these reports annually. As a matter of course, every March, by the end of March of every year, we have to have council pass a resolution accepting the summary reports. I wanted to take a moment, though, today with new council just to introduce Ontario Clean Water Agency. And we do have 2 representatives, Mr. Frigo and Ms. Budden from Ontario Clean Water Agency. They're an important group to this township. They operate 4 water plants for us and stay on top of the condition of our drinking water plants, and they do all of the regulatory requirements related to our drinking water systems. They also have been instrumental in stepping in and helping to operate our biodigester, put it in a winterized state last fall, and help us operate the lagoon. So Chair Pringle, I just wanted to take a few minutes just to introduce the agency and their importance to this township. Thank you.
Thank you for that, CAO Fletcher. Yes, it is nice to meet the people that we're working with.
Well, just one other
Oh, yep.
point, and I know we'll follow up with this. Ontario Clean Water Agency has also offered to provide training for council around the statutory duty of care for the water systems, and I had connected with my colleague in Chatsworth, and Chatsworth Council is also interested. So we'll work with council. You know how difficult it is for us to get everybody's time scheduled, but we'll work on that because we think it's important training.
Thank you for that. Yes, it is important training and look forward to the dates we get to be able to do that. I'll just read that recommendation. I got one more time before I ask for mover or seconder. The council received for information and accept the annual drinking water summary report attached as Appendix A. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Shoalice and Councillor Coburn. Any discussion? I will call the vote. All those in favor? It is carried. All right, on to the next one, which is for planning, the Community Improvement Plan Steering Committee members. The recommendation is that report PL 2023.12 be received for information and that 2 council members be appointed to the steering committee for the Community Improvement Plan 2023. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Coburn, Mayor Carlton, any discussion? I see we do have Jen on the line if we need to discuss anything with Jen. No, Councillor Day.
Hello. I was wondering how the community members will be selected to sit on the committee. I tried to say that without saying committee too often, but failed.
Thanks. I'll turn it over to Jen Burnett there.
Mr. Chair.
Planner.
So the consultants have recommended, based on their experience, who we should reach out to. So I did a direct invitation to one of our local farm business owners, and he has accepted. And the other members would be the County of Grey Economic Development Department. So Steve Furness is the manager, and he has agreed to sit on the committee as well. And then it would be inside the, in terms of Georgian Bluff staff, it would be myself plus one of the staff members who would be responsible for that portfolio once the CIP has actually been approved by council, and then 2 members of council.
Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chair Pringle, and through you to our planner, Jen. I'm wondering why we didn't reach out to the community at large to get interested folks coming forward rather than perhaps singling out specific businesses. So that's one question. Another one is, I know we have folks in our community who have professional expertise in economic development. It doesn't look to me like those folks would have an opportunity to sit on this committee. Is it just the ones that you've listed, and in particular from the community business owners?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Coburn. The recommendation for the members to comprise the steering committee came from the consultants based on their experience. So the idea was to scope it to a smaller group, so that A, it was manageable, and B, that there was sufficient representation. If council would like to direct that that we reach out to specific groups, then by all means we could do that. And if there are specific groups that you would like us to reach out to, then we can do that for sure.
Councillor Coburn.
Thank you. Just a follow up to that, Jen. So we have a farm business representative who's agreed to sit on that, and I think that's wonderful. I'm wondering about another business representative from a different sector, from our commercial side of things. Might that be helpful?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we have the economic development office from the county on on the committee is because they have the expertise where they represent the larger Grey County Economic Development Initiative. The reason why we are specifically targeting a farm business operation is because within Council's strategic plan, farm business operations, improving farm business operations and opportunities for farm business operations is identified as an objective in that plan. So that's the reason for reaching out to that operator.
Thanks for that, Adam Planner there. So I guess on the direction, we are still looking for 2 representatives from council to be on this committee. I guess I'm going to put it out there. Do we have 2 volunteers, or anybody want to volunteer to be on? Councillor Coburn is a yes. So Councillor Coburn for sure. Afternoon, Mr. Thompson. Councillor Thompson. So he says in there he's trying to do something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I couldn't get my mute to come off there. Sorry that I'm late. Thank you for the welcome.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. So just, I think we do have 2 volunteers that are willing to be on this committee. It'll be Councillor Coburn and Mayor Carlton will be the 2 reps from the council. Yep. Turn it over to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we just need a amending motion to specifically appoint those 2 members. So I would suggest that the amendment read as follows: that Councillor Cathy Moore Coburn, sorry, it's the second line of the recommendation, that Councillor Cathy Moore Coburn and Mayor Carlton be appointed to the steering committee for the Community Improvement Plan 2023.
Perfect. And we've already got a mover and seconder on that. No. We still need that.
That's
Okay.
the amendment.
Oh, I sorry. Need a mover and a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Shouldice, Councillor Day. All those in favor? That gets carried. Now we've got to go back. Okay, so we'll go back to vote on the original motion. Any discussion on the original motion? Good. Yep, Councillor Coburn.
I guess I'm appealing to my fellow councillors. Do we feel like we need another voice at this table? I know we have a recommendation. I still feel a bit uneasy about not inviting one of our own business operators in our commercial sector. Is anyone else feeling that way? If it's just me, I'll let it go begrudgingly.
Mayor Carlton.
I'm wondering if that's something that could be brought up at the first meeting of that committee for the committee members to discuss and maybe reach out at that point, if that would be acceptable. I see Jen nodding her head.
Any further direction for me on that? Okay, so the motion as amended, I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, moving on to finances. 2022 council remuneration and expenses. The recommendation reads: the Committee of the Whole approves report FIN 2023-03-2022 council remuneration and expenses to fulfill the township's requirements under Section 284 of the Municipal Act 2001. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Shouldice. Is there any discussion? Looks content. No hands are up. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. All right, slipping right along. We're moving into the CAO report on a short-term accommodation update. And the recommendation is that staff procure a short-term accommodation software and services packages to assist the township in identifying and tracking activity in this market, and that a more proactive approach to enforcement of related bylaws be supported, and that staff be directed to hire one seasonal bylaw enforcement resource to support a more proactive approach to enforcement as outlined in this report. and that council approves the creation of a nuisance bylaw, Apex A, and that staff develop a focused communication and engagement campaign related to short-term accommodations in Georgian Bluffs as outlined in this report, and that staff hire one temp resource to support such communication efforts, and that a budget impact of $90,000 be identified within the budget 2023 to support the work related to short-term accommodation review, and that staff be directed to report back to council by the end of the 2023 on the results of the program implemented during the spring and summer of 2023. I need a mover and a seconder. Mayor Carlton, Councillor Schuldeis. I'll turn it over to CAO Fletcher for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Chair Pringle. We're just getting queued up here. Good evening, Chair Pringle, members of council and community members. Staff is here to present a report on short-term accommodations as directed by council last August. This report has touched every area of our organization. We've learned a lot, but it has drawn in resources, and it's been a very collaborative approach by our senior leadership team. Previous council gave us direction to come back with information on short-term accommodation activity within Georgian Bluffs, recommendations to address issues associated with short-term accommodations. And so the report you have before you tonight makes recommendations for 2023. That is not a one and done. That is building a foundation. We have recognized, and we will tell council, this is a new and ongoing body of work and a new and ongoing service level for our community. There's no turning back now. We are proposing an engagement and an evaluation campaign and program so that we can hear perspectives from all sides. And we intend and commit to following up by the end of the calendar year with a report on the program for 2023 and recommendations moving forward. I might start, Chair Pringle, with what do we mean by short-term accommodation? So these are private dwellings. They might be renting their entire property or part of the property. It's on a temporary basis, and it's not referencing those properties that are commercially zoned for to provide accommodations to travelers. While we still have a lot to learn in this area, we definitely know there are concerns, and there are unacceptable concerns for some of our residents. The thing is, we don't know the breadth or the scope of everything that we need to deal with. We've heard the concerns. The other thing that is troubling is, in some cases, there's a general lack of respect and a general lack of regard for private property. So those are two other concerns that we need to take into consideration. And we'll make recommendations in this report, but further recommendations ongoing. So you asked us, or previous council asked us, to come back with data related to activity within Georgian Bluffs. Previous reports to council, I think there were one or two, and this report, we started with using a tool that is available. The challenge that we have with the integrity of this data is it's point in time. It's not ongoing monitoring of the activity. We're not the experts in how to scour websites, track the information, identify individual properties. So it begs the question whether the accuracy of the data. So for instance, we don't know if a property is listed on multiple sites, whether it's being counted more than once. We don't know that we're capturing all of the sites that are out there. So while we've given you a graph and it does indicate an increase in activity, we can't stand here and solidly say the data is accurate. For that reason, Council, one of our first recommendations, and it is a recommendation that comes from colleague municipalities who have been dealing with short-term accommodations and or short-term rentals for a number of years, is you need to get accurate data. You need to establish that baseline, and you need to use the data to focus your resources and build your program. So we are recommending that we acquire the base level of a tracking and ongoing monitoring service. These are folks who do this every day. They understand how to identify, they understand how to give us information on the properties that are within our township. There are different levels of service that we can consider moving forward in the future, but this will help us define the scope of activity in the township. It will help us provide that ongoing monitoring, not point in time. It will help us assess the success of what we're doing and identify the areas where we should be focusing our resources and investment. And I've chatted with 3 colleagues recently who say they've been into this kind of program for a number of years. They say this is what they wish they had done right from square one. The second thing, we need to get at the behavior, the adverse behavior that some of our residents are experiencing. And so our next recommendation, Council, is around our bylaws, which are our tools, and around our enforcement process. So we have 5 current bylaws that, if Council will support us taking a much more proactive approach. Right now, Georgian Bluff's approach to bylaw enforcement is complaint driven. It's reactionary. We need to be more proactive. We're also recommending a new nuisance bylaw, which is much more comprehensive. We direct it at the owner, and it gives it's another tool that our folks can utilize to address the adverse behavior. We're also requesting an additional seasonal resource to be focused using the data that comes from the tracking, allows us to focus resources on the concerns. And with that, it would be our intention to get to the issues before our residents are impacted. So instead of waiting for the phone call to come in, we're focusing resources in the areas and at the times of day that we think there may be the issues. The other area, Council, that we've heard loud and clear, I was at a conference recently where they presented information on short-term rentals and short-term accommodations, connected with many folks who have been into this program for some time. Even the software tracking company has said, do not shortchange your community on community engagement, communication, and education. There are examples of a number of municipalities who have jumped in very quickly to licensing in a restrictive program, who are now backtracking and changing things. So it would be our recommendation, Council, that a full community engagement program, hearing all perspectives, understanding how big the issue is, what the specific issues are, what we need to address before putting a program together would be very important. And this, for me, is also would allow us to set the expectations that Georgian Bluffs has for people who are in this sector. It's not acceptable to have the disrespect that's going on in some cases, or the disregard for other people. And we can set those expectations through this education and engagement process. But folks were very clear, don't skimp in this area. Don't jump too quickly. I haven't talked to anybody who thinks their program's perfect. And most people have said there is no one size that fits all. You need to take the time, listen to the community, and build the program that works for Georgian Bluffs. Having said that, Council, we do need to address things for 2023. So we've put before you our recommendations on what we need for a program for 2023, and with the commitment that we come back to you by the end of the calendar year with all the feedback we've heard, the successes, the challenges, and our recommendations moving forward. And with that, Chair Pringle, I'll turn it back to Council, and if there are questions or comments.
Yeah, thanks, CEO Fletcher. There, that's good, and you've raised some great points there too for us to be conscious of when we're in this debate on this stuff. So that's great. I think we want to have our two speakers go first, and then we'll have questions for everybody. Go that direction. So I do have two delegates here have registered with the clerk's office to provide comments. The first one would be Heather Barfoot. Like to come to the mic. Provide us your comments, please.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Yes, you're right. I'm forgetting the instructions I was given. I'm sorry. I want to say thank you, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and other community members for letting me speak today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to address this extremely important issue. As you can see, I put in a little PowerPoint presentation together. I understand I should keep this fairly short, so there is more information in the PowerPoint maybe than I'm going to touch on, but I just want, I wanted to, as it says here, really provide an owner's perspective. I listened very, very carefully to the delegation that was made to council in August of 2022. And I am sorry, I've forgotten your name. Cynthia. I have to absolutely agree with Cynthia that what has been experienced by some folks in the community is absolutely unacceptable. As an owner, I would never allow it. And I think that is, that's the bottom line about all of us moving forward together. Oh, technology lets me down. Of course it does. Okay, if we can, oh, I've got it. Never mind. Okay. This is my husband and I. Again, my name's Heather Barfoot. This is my husband, Ray. I called him and asked him if I could use the picture, and he said, "Why are you putting a picture? It's ridiculous." And the reason I did it is because this is an issue that when there's difficulties, it generates a lot of what's the word I want? It generates a lot of emotion. And it's important to recognize that the vast majority of owners, we can assume, though with data, we'll know more of people who operate short-term accommodations are in your community, are benefiting from being able to do this. They're providing broad economic benefits, et cetera. It's important to put faces instead of these are just, these people that are doing this to me. So we would qualify as returnees. We were married in 1979. We left Owen Sound, or the entire area. My husband and I both lived in Keppel, Sarawak, Derby, et cetera, born and raised here. And we left for university in the mid-70s, and you get jobs elsewhere and you build a life and away you go. We always wanted to have a place back at home. And in 2016, we were able to buy Heineman House. It's on Heineman Side Road, just not far from Shallow Lake. It's a authentic square log house built in, we think, 1868. And it was also owned by the Heineman family, who is my husband's mother's family. She was actually born and raised in that house, and they owned the house for about 60, 70 years. So it's very precious to us. And we took this on as an unexpected retirement project. We would have liked to travel. We would have liked to have done other things, but instead we decided to do this. And we want to preserve this house as an important artifact for the future, as a building itself, but also for our family. It was the potential for short-term rentals that made it possible for us. Every cent that we make from this house and have made since we started to rent in 2019 goes into improving the property. Now, I'm not giving you this story because I think this is totally typical. I'm not. I just want you to understand our story, why this is so precious to us. Our guests know that when they come to visit, that they're supporting this endeavor. We are absent, actually, when it comes to I think the reference was made in the August 2022 to ghost hotels. So we might be seen to be that because we don't live in the area. We actually live in the Niagara area. We visit frequently, but we are not physically present when our guests are at our house. We do, however, have an extensive network of local supervision. We have eyes on the property at all times, lots of people driving by, and we have very good relationships with our neighbors, which is extraordinarily important. We employ local cleaning and property maintenance services, lawn, etc. We tried to do all the turnovers of ourselves, and I couldn't figure out what bed I was waking up in after a while, so we had to hire that out. So we did that. We buy local renovation materials and supplies whenever possible. I do shop at Costco, however, just have to confess about that. So it's working for us. As I said, we've been renting since 2019. We've had very good not only reviews, but guests love the place, and they are extremely respectful of our property. And I'm thinking, why is that working for us? Why is that working for us? And it's not seems to be working for other people. Prior to booking, we are very deliberate about what we do. I do all the messaging with guests, clear, friendly messaging with guests to get to know them and their plans. What are they doing here? How many people are going to be there? Very clear about all of that. I understand the booking platform rules. We were using booking.com as well as Airbnb originally. We're now exclusively on Airbnb. But I understand what those rules are. It's extremely important to understand how the platform works and to communicate those rules to guests. We have our own host rules, which our guests must agree to before they ever book. One of them is maintain the quiet nature of the neighborhood, particularly in the evening and at night. And we will exercise sanctions for guests who break those rules. So as an owner, we're very clear about those things. Post-booking, I send a very clear, detailed message about the house, the expectations, the area, all of that, clear communication, friendly, respectful, but no ambiguity about what is expected when people come to our place. We have a clear line of communication about any issues with guests and also with our neighbors. And as I said before, we actively maintain a local support network. So we know that if anything goes hinky, we're going to get the call directly. I think this is an unequivocal statement. Neighborhood disruption is unacceptable by anyone, short-term accommodations included. I think I maybe got ahead of myself with my earlier comments, but I believe that very strongly. I think it's extremely important. And again, I was so pleased to hear the comments from before. I would really welcome council and staff to partner with responsible owners moving forward to really make this a positive experience for Georgian Bluffs, to encourage people to come to this amazing area and provide opportunities for people who live here. Seek information and input from all stakeholders that was already addressed. Get the data, 100%. It isn't just how many rentals are there, it's who owns them, who's operating them. Are they in very key information about that. Weigh all the factors to put guidelines in place that will balance eliminating negative behavior and impact and supporting the benefits that can come from this this area of the economy. And in the end, Georgian Bluffs sets the expectations, short-term accommodation owners regulate to meet those expectations, and the bad actors suffer the consequences. That is a logical and sustainable process moving forward. I have actually, there was an all candidates meeting before the election, and I attended. It was in Kemble. And I actually started this Facebook group after that meeting. I don't know if you can see it there. It's called the Short-Term Rental Owners Association of Georgian Bluffs. I have had a hard time figuring out how I'm going to contact people to let them know I exist. I have a feeling hi there on YouTube. I might be getting lots of requests after today. Two of us right now are members of this association, myself and my sister and her husband, Betty and Brian Wood, who have a suite on Presskill Road. And our other delegate today is from that same area. The goal of this Facebook group and organizing this, putting this organization together, is to promote responsible short-term accommodation ownership and operation in Georgian Bluffs, provide a clearinghouse for information, make sure it's easy to get information out to people who, again, some are local, but some are not. Collaborate on resources. There are many resources in the area where we can, but it's hard to pull together the ones that we actually need for our guests at any one point in time. So from a short-term rental point of view, that could be helpful. But this last point is the most important point. I would like to create a seal of approval for member short-term rental, short-term accommodation, I say either one, that comply with good neighbor policies. And there is one that I actually think is marvelous. And as an example, of course, it's going to give me grief. Okay, good, thank you. So this is a short-term rental. Can I say yes? I think it's telling me that it thinks it's not going to be. I can tell you about it if we can't get to it. That's fine. The one up above, Strong, STROG, Yeah, thanks. Okay. Thank you. This is an organization in Galveston, Texas. Galveston, of course, is a major tourism area. Massive numbers of short-term rentals. This organization has members join the organization. This is their philosophy: live like a local, be responsible like a local. And that's a message for owners, but it's also the message for guests as well. So they also, if this will let me do it from here, they provide information about this. They call this their Good Neighbor brochure. So it's part of information that goes out to the guests of every member in this association that talks about the basics, being a good neighbor, parking, about noise. What else have we got here? This is it's actually a brochure, so the format's not so great. About the numbers of people in the house, just general behavior in promoting, describing, being very explicit about what that good neighbor behavior and what those expectations are. So this is a model. It's already existing. I've looked, but I haven't actually found other ones that I think work as well as this one does. But we're not tilling new ground here. This is we have good examples of organizations that have done this before us, and we could really benefit from that. And so this vetting of members of the association would involve things like, okay, what are your rules for your house? Have you had any complaints? What have you done about those complaints? Like, you can have members, peers, owners who are involved in some of the addressing some of the problems. In terms of the recommendations that are being made tonight, strong support from my point of view and the folks that I've talked to for 7 of the 8 for sure, especially the one about communication, a focused communication engagement campaign and a temporary resource to support such communication efforts. I think that's absolutely important, so critical. My only concern was when I read the document, it said the communication engagement program will encourage and emphasize the importance of submitting concerns using Contact GB. The engagement and communication has to be beyond how you make a better complaint. Do you know what I mean? How you get a complaint through faster. I 100% agree. That has to be absolutely clear to members of the community that if they have a concern, there should be a quick way to get that concern heard. But when I read those words, I see that as a stated focus. I think the focus needs to be broader. To me, the way to fix this problem is at the source with the short-term accommodation owners. I believe that Georgian Bluffs must engage with owners to effectively understand who they are and why they rent, convey that live like a local, be responsible like a local, can be consistent with that message, and then invite them as partners to the process. I'm here tonight because I'm putting my hand up. I'm saying, please, I would like to help with this process. And I feel I can gather the voices of other short-term association owners, accommodation owners, to be a helpful voice in the process. The one thing I was a little...
I'm sorry to interrupt very much, but we are violating our procedure bylaw, and that is not your fault.
Okay.
So at this point in time, I would ask that we make a decision about exceeding the 5-minute delegation cutoff, because we've exceeded it ×3 now. So I would like the chair to make a call on this. Okay. I'm happy to extend the time because we already have, as long as the same generosity is afforded to the rest of our speakers. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification there, Councillor Colburn. Yeah, give you another two more minutes.
100%. I'm good.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The one concern I had was with one aspect of the public nuisance bylaw. There's a comment about definition of public nuisance as item C: screaming, spitting, yelling, shouting, or using profane and abusive language and gestures. Yes, many of those I agree with. Some it's extremely broad. What happens with children playing in the yard, or yay, we won the game, or you know what I mean? It's extremely broad. That's my concern when it comes to the wording of that part of the bylaw. And I'm also concerned about the enforcement, and I do understand the urge to be proactive. But a statement like this statement, any officer may enter on land at any reasonable time for the purpose of carrying out an inspection to determine whether any provision of this bylaw is being complied with. That's without cause, with no complaint behind it. On any property in Georgian Bluffs, do other bylaws operate on this basis? I'd be curious about that, if that can be part of the discussion afterward. I understand the emphasis on being proactive, but I believe that that has to be done in a way that is not intrusive to the enjoyment of property. If you want to take a look, I did give you a couple of resources. Airbnb, for instance, has a new neighborhood support. Don't have to be a member. You can be a person who's in a community and observing a situation, can lodge a complaint directly with Airbnb through this through this option. So they have certainly made a lot of changes in their platform since summer of last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Ms. Barfoot. That was a good presentation there. We do have another delegation, Jane Fritz and Doug Morrison. I'd like to welcome Ms. Fritz and Mr. Morrison. Please provide us with your comments.
Hello. Mine's going to be a lot shorter. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, councillors, staff, other members of the Grey Bruce area. And thanks, Heather, for your very detailed presentation. I think she said a lot of what I would have liked to said, so I'm not going to repeat, but I will say that I've been a short-term rental owner for since 30 years, maybe, since I moved to Georgian Bluffs, basically. And I have followed basically the idea that she has is if you have your house that you're renting from and you have rules, I do believe that the people do respect you so much more. It's kind of like I look at everything is if you have a parent who gives you guidelines and teaches you respect, I do that with my guests. I say to them when they arrive, I have a house rule list. I go through it. I make them very welcome when they arrive. I'm excited to have them stay. How I got into it was basically I got approached by realtors who were looking for people who would have short-term homes that could accommodate different people that where they didn't have anything, you know, they were going to move into a house and it wasn't available for a month. So I offered, sure, I can do that. It was just a friend, a realtor, and I offered that up. So it just evolved from there. Then I had medical people contacting me because they were coming to the hospital to work, or dentists or pastors. So it became just short term, but not Airbnb. And then I ended up getting sick. So it was a way of compensating our income. And so I signed up with Airbnb and used their facilities and their guidance. And I've had nothing but great and rave reviews. But I think it stems from, like I say, if you have parents that set guidelines and rules, and that will be you. And if you set that and work with your children, us, I think we can make this community a wonderful spot that will continue to welcome some lovely people from all over the world. And I think that we are fortunate to have a council that is willing to work with us and make this a better place. So I thank you and for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, you raised some great points there too, and this is, it's a very serious project for us to look into, and we want to make sure we do it right. So I do see we have another delegation in the crowd there. Were you wanting to speak to the short-term? Yeah, we can certainly waive a bylaw to have you do that, right, Carly? We have to make an amendment to that?
Yes, so council can opt to, through you, Mr. Chair, council can opt to waive their procedure bylaw to allow the delegation to speak.
Okay.
You just need a mover and seconder, and then you should take the vote.
Councillor Coburn. Mayor Carlton. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried.
Is it on? This is on. Okay.
Just state your name. Just state your name and address for us, please.
Sure. Jenica Kaspraviches, 195 Balmy Beach Road. And I was the delegate who spoke in August. So you probably heard me. And thank you very much for letting me speak. I have got all the ideas. I've been taking notes. One thing that that we've been concerned about at our house and the neighbors who always speak to us is that we really truly appreciate the work that the staff has done this year in terms of the research and the recommendations for this issue. So thank you for that. The main concern is the funding that like the budget that's going to pay for this software program is expensive, and taxpayers are paying for that when some, but obviously not all, but some owners who are not in the area and not spending the money in the area are just waiting to be flagged and monitored, but they're not paying into it at all, aside from their property taxes. But I mean, that to us, it seems like an obvious answer would be there should be some kind of licensing, as any other business in Georgian Bluffs would have to pay. Is why not have a licensing fee for the owners? And of course, there will be people who try to remain hidden and not be seen, but neighbors know what's happening and they would keep people informed on council. So that was our main concern. And it's been interesting to hear the report and to hear from the other delegates today. I think it's really great to hear that some owners want to have communication and want to have a seal of approval and hold other owners accountable for what they're doing, because I agree, this is affecting a lot of people, and unfortunately not all owners are as responsible and respectful of Georgian Bluffs and the residents here. So I guess I'll stop talking, but if there is a takeaway, the neighbors in our area and we have been discussing why we are paying for the software program and not the owners of short-term accommodations. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you for that. Good information there also. So again, yeah, there's lots of takeaways here from what's moving forward here. And I guess we're at the point now for discussion amongst council here. Anybody got any? Councillor Coburn.
I have a curling game at 7, and yet I have a million things to say. So if it's okay, I'll start with some questions for our staff regarding the report. I find the way that this motion is written very difficult to approve as it is, because there's 7 asks, and some of them I like and some of them I don't like. So I'm hoping council will see it fit to break that down a little bit and have perhaps voting on these things as separate items. So in terms of the new bylaw, the nuisance bylaw, I first brought this request to council in February of 2021. This is over 2 years later. I'm happy to see that we're getting a nuisance bylaw put in place, regardless of the length of time it's taken. So I'm happy about that. I do have some concerns. We have We have run into challenges as a municipality in the past in enforcing our bylaws. And I think some of that is staffing resources. And I think, in fairness to staff, some of it has come from council with the notion that we don't want to carry a big stick. We want to take the education and awareness approach. We just want to talk to folks. And frankly, I got to say, I'm sick of that. It hasn't worked. And I think it's fine to have an education and awareness campaign, but then we will consider folks adequately warned, and then we do need to start fining them. The nuisance bylaw addresses multiple days of an infraction and how the fines can build. What it doesn't address, I don't think, is how we deal with repeat offenders. So a venue who has different folks there every weekend, and there are loud nuisance parties going on every weekend. I don't think the bylaw addresses the fact that, you know, if we're just going to hit them with a $500 fine every once in a while, how effective is that going to be? And how do we deal with them if they have had multiple infractions? I do note that some nuisance bylaws in other municipalities have the ability to charge, or to fine rather, up to $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 for repeat offenders. And we know the evidence suggests that the higher the fine, the more of a deterrent it is. So I guess I'm asking, do you feel that repeat offender has been adequately addressed, and is there provisions that could be added for those situations?
So thank you for the question. And Chair Pringle, I might invite Mr. Lewis to comment. I know that at some point things become matters for the court, but I think Mr. Lewis would probably be best to speak to the bylaw.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead there, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, and through you to council and general public. As far as repeat offenders go, CEO Fletcher is correct that that's a function of the court. Okay, so if you have an offender who keeps coming up in court, they will see an increased penalty every time they show up in court. Okay, and the court can make orders, you know, in regards to their behavior, but that's, you know, covered under the Provincial Offences Act. That does not have to be in the bylaw. So that does get taken care of through the process. If I might, I would address the concern of bylaw officers entering property. Most bylaws in Ontario give the bylaw officers the right to enter property during reasonable hours. Okay, so that's usually daytime hours. Okay, if it's after daytime hours, they don't have the authority to do that. Of course, you know, whether the entering the property is reasonable or not, again, is up to the court. Okay, and if a bylaw officer, you know, abuses his authority, there can be repercussions to him for doing that, or her. And in regards to the comment about, you know, babies crying and stuff like that, that comes down to common sense and reasonableness, okay? And people enforcing bylaws, you know, I would hope are being reasonable. And again, the court would decide based on the evidence whether, you know, having somebody in court for what's alleged to be a nuisance is reasonable or not. But I would hope, I know I would instruct my staff to be reasonable, and it would have to be a lot more than a baby crying or somebody cheering over winning a hockey game for us to step in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, sir. Councilor Coburn.
So thank you, Tim, and through Chair Pringle to you. I'm not sure my question was addressed about adding something in the bylaw to address repeat offenders. I have seen that wording in other municipal bylaws. Is that something we can put right in our bylaw so that we have a little more backing when things do get escalated to the court situation?
Respectfully, I don't think we need that backing. That's already given us under the Provincial Offences Act. Okay, and that's what governs the conduct in court. Okay, if the JP sees somebody who's been there once and he's given them, you know, a $5,000 fine and he hasn't listened, the next time they will double that fine. You know, they will operate within the parameters until they get to a point where, you know, they've exercised all their authority. I don't think it's, you know, you can direct us otherwise, and I respect that. I don't think it's in the best interest of the municipality to second guess, you know, the legal system.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Lewis. Yep, sorry. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any further comments? Oh, Councilor Coburn.
I was going to wait my turn, but I don't see any other hands going up. I wonder if staff looked into and considered our ability to impose a municipal accommodation tax the way other municipalities have. And I ask this partly because of what one of our speakers said. It seems to me that we have folks who are paying residential taxes but operating commercial businesses. They're profiting from that. And now, as was stated far more eloquently than I am about to likely, now we're asking the entire rest of our municipality to shoulder the cost of a software program and 2 additional staff members, albeit temporary staff. I would like us to consider a user pay model. I would like us to, while we're collecting the data, put a registration system in place so the folks that are running these establishments pay a fee to offset the costs that we're going to incur as a result of increased bylaw and the need for more communications. This is the stumbling point for me in accepting and voting in favor of this particular report. We talk about a user pay model. We talk about how that's fair and equitable. I am not suggesting we have an outright ban on short stay rentals, but I am suggesting that our entire population should not have to pay for a small number of folks to be profitable at a residential tax rate. It makes no sense.
So through you, Chair Pringle, we can take that as direction for our future report to come back. Quite frankly, right now, I wouldn't even know where to start and who to charge a licensing fee to or a MAT tax to, because we don't have the information and data. So what you have before you is the base level of us getting a handle on where these short-term rentals or short-term accommodations are, who they are, and who we should focus whatever the program looks like moving forward. If we were to go to a licensing MAT tax, we're into a different level of either that software or service or hiring internal resources on top of what's before you today. So the base level for the software is simply allowing us to set a baseline and understand who we should be focusing on. Thank you.
You see CAO Fletcher there, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for bearing with me. It seems to be a delay when I try to unmute. I share the concerns of Councillor Coburn, and although I can appreciate that we're trying to keep costs to a minimum, we're trying to gather information. I honor those things, but is there a way for a hybrid? Like, is there a way for some compromise between to look at some way to recoup some of the costs in a registration or a licensing in the first year? Like, is there is there no way to accomplish at least some of that? I understand we don't want to be hasty, but I'm still curious about if we can start to implement a registration as I think we're going to identify, part of our process is going to be identifying an education. Can we not apply a registration as we identify and educate?
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson. Mayor Carleton.
I think I'm maybe looking at this a little differently. I see this as the starting point to get the information we need to determine, do we want to go ahead with a licensing process? And I say that because I see a lot of staff resources being taken up in doing that licensing process. So I think first we need to know how large the problem is out there, how many short-term accommodations are there in the municipality, and what would we be looking at for a dollar value. So I think the software is an investment in allowing staff to go ahead and get that information. I see the bylaw enforcement this year as a way of trying to get on top of what's happened in the past and trying to protect the residents who end up living next to one of these, where the owner of that accommodation is out of area and isn't monitoring what's happening within their unit that they're renting out. So I think bylaw enforcement helps in that manner for the other residents. I think what I took out of the Roma conference when this was brought up was we need to be very thorough as we move forward through this, that we don't want to jump on things, make quick decisions, and then have to backtrack. So I think we need to give ourselves and staff the time to get all the information we need to make the right decision so we can keep moving forward, and be cognizant of the fact that we're going to have to revise this over the time. We won't get it right the first time because nobody else has. So I think every area is a little different, and what we do, I guess what it comes down to in my mind is 95% of the short-term accommodations are probably following the rules and ensuring that their properties are maintained properly. It's that 5% that are causing the troubles. So let's focus on them with the enforcement. But first we have to find out where everybody is and what's happening. So I see all of this as a starting point, but it's just a starting point. We've got a lot further to go from this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Carleton. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I seem to share Councillor Thompson's mute delay this evening. First of all, I would like to recommend that we take into account the feedback we've already received from the neighbors who have been having trouble with short-term accommodations in their neighborhood. So if this year's bylaw officer could proactively communicate with, or the municipality could proactively communicate with those particular STA owners, then that might help in make the 2023 season a little bit more calm, or hopefully a lot more calm in those neighborhoods. And I also have a question through you, Chair, to the CAO. You've referred to other municipalities, neighboring municipalities perhaps, that are considering backtracking on their licensing fees or registration policies. I just wonder if we could get a little bit more detail about what didn't work for other municipalities so that we could understand the scenario a little bit better about why it might be important to delay beginning some kind of licensing program to recoup the fees. I'd love to understand your perspective a little bit more. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Pringleton, thank you for the question. I think it runs the gamut. I think there are municipalities that have taken something that someone else has done and tried to make the one size fits all, and it doesn't fit the context of their community. There are others who jumped in and started a licensing or taxation program, and they didn't have all of their data accurate. They didn't understand who the players were. Jumped into the deep end of the pool with programs that were restrictive or or had a licensing aspect to them, and they got a lot of backlash. So they hadn't heard enough from the people who are in this sector. I appreciate, and I feel the same way. If I take my CAO hat off, I'm a taxpayer in Georgian Bluffs as well. I understand that we need to be fiscally responsible. I honestly do not have a resource that I can assign to registration or licensing right now. And I don't even know what that looks like. So until we can really understand and get the proper feedback on what that looks like, I would likely be back at the next council meeting asking for some additional resources to put any sort of research and program in place. So what we've tried to present to you today is a building the foundation for something that we will build upon for the future. We believe that we can connect, as Councillor Day has said, with those areas. We do know of a few properties that we need to put some focus on this year. We've already got some people who want to be part of the community engagement, and we're going to move forward with that. But we've presented to you too what we can achieve this year. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Schultes.
I just want to say, I think it's important, or I would like to agree with our CEO in that I think it's important that we get something started today, get the groundwork on the ground. I think that I would like to say that I would like to see a much more strict approach to short-term rentals, and that I inherently am completely against vacant landlords in Georgian Bluffs, but I want to talk about mirroring other neighboring municipalities such as the Northern Bruce Peninsula, who they have a tax on short-term accommodations and short-term rentals, or Tiny Township. I don't know if anybody has heard of what Tiny Township has done, but they set up a registry sort of similar to what we're thinking about here. I would like to see a registry in Georgian Bluffs where we have some sort of online tracking system or an online search where we're able to see where these short-term rentals are located. I want to see a $1,500 setup fee to get your short-term rental on the ground, to get it running. Because if the township is going to pay X amount of money to get this new program set up, I think that it should be of the responsibility of the business owner to front that fee. As well, they set up a $100,000 first-time offense fee, in that if you go over, you're going to pay that fine, and that they would as well see a no less than 6 days stay. I think those are all important rules. I think that there is value in mirroring our neighboring municipalities. I would like to see a much more strict approach to this.
So I wasn't going to single any municipality out in my response, but I can tell you that the municipality you've referred to, every single one of their council members attended the session that I attended, and we're having great conversations about their program afterward. So as I said, I haven't met anyone who thinks that they've got it nailed down. One of the things that I'm encouraged about tonight, and I've had conversations with 2 other operators of short-term accommodations, is I'm almost hearing a grassroots program that we could build upon here. I'm hearing some people who are in this sector who are willing to be part of the solution. And that for me is very encouraging.
Councillor Colburn.
I'm going to reference another municipality that's in our backyard, and in fact is one of our closest neighbors, and that's the town of South Bruce Peninsula. They have implemented a tax for this type of thing, and their year-end report presented in February shows that they have over $200,000 collected for their municipality to go back into their programs and services. I know that it's not exactly like Georgian Bluffs. I'd be willing to bet they have more short-term rental establishments than we do. But I think it can be done. And I haven't read anywhere where this municipality is backtracking on any of that. So it seems to me that something must be working. I echo my colleague, Councillor Schuldeis's comments that I think we can do a tandem or hybrid approach where we are collecting a registration fee. I don't think we need to go straight down the municipal accommodation tax route, but I'm wondering if we can switch our resources around a little bit. We've talked about a communications staff person. We already have a communications staff person, and I know I can't comment on workload, but it would be nice if that could be part of that individual's that position. And I like the idea of more enforcement. Someone spoke earlier too about collaborating. I think Sue, Mayor Carlton, about collaborating with the town of South Bruce. I wonder if this might be an area where we could collaborate with them and share some resources as well, since they seem to be a step or two ahead of us.
CAO Fletcher.
So again, I wasn't going to single out any township, but we reached out to South Bruce Peninsula, and they very much stressed the need for community engagement. In fact, felt they did it way too quickly. So if anything, they were the first ones who said to us, do not skimp on your community engagement. If they had it to do over again, they would allow more time. I will comment on workload, and we cannot pull this community engagement off with a one-person communication department. So if you want it done properly, council, we need the additional resource.
Mayor Carlton.
I think we as council need to be very aware that while it looks like we can get some more revenue coming in, what is the cost in staff time to be able to do that? And if we've already overloaded staff, how do we add something else on there? And I think we need to be careful. What I heard from others at the conference was, this is not a revenue maker. The chances of even breaking even on it are slim. So I think some of the reports that show the revenue coming in aren't showing what the offsetting expenses are, because I heard from most that they didn't see this as a revenue making tool. I think we want to take the time and communicate with our residents to find out what's needed. I'm like the CAO and very pleased to see that there are people in this business who are willing to be part of that solution. I think that's encouraging. And I think they can give us a lot of valid information about it. I think we need to work with those people and talk with everyone out there. What are the problems? Find out what solutions are in other areas before we jump on making ours. We might find an accommodation tax, the cost to implement it is more than what we're going to get in. And if it's only a few properties, and we don't know how many properties it is yet that are actual issues, are we better regulating those properties in a different way and allowing the others who are following the rules and are making sure their residents that they're renting out isn't an issue for their neighbors? I think we need a lot of information before we start moving ahead on anything. So let's let staff work this. The software was one of the things that everybody said, get that because it'll track it and it'll give you the data. Part of the reason we asked people to go in and contact GB, that gives us the background data that here's an issue. This problem keeps recurring over and over. So that's why we ask for people to use that, because it gives us data to work from going ahead. My big thing that I heard at Roma and I've heard from others is we need to take our time. Let's not go too fast. Let's find ways to do the best we can for bylaw enforcement in the problem areas this year. And by next year, be ready to proceed, or by this fall, be ready to proceed with full implementation of something that will work best for us, because we're different from our neighbors. We have different requirements. We have different tourism needs and such. So we're different from our neighbors in a lot of ways. So I just caution everybody, let's take our time, make sure what we do is the right move.
Councillor Day.
Through you, Chair, to CAO Fletcher, is the licensing fee one-time investment, or is how much of it is an annual cost to have a license to the program?
Through you, Chair Pringle, we haven't even looked into what an annual program would look like or what a one-time program would look like. Those are all details to come.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? So I guess what I'm gonna say on this, I guess too, there's some great points have been made here today in this, but I really believe we need a starting point. You need to know somewhere to start to know where we are gonna go. We're speculating that we got 110 or 115, could be 300 for all we know, right? We don't know those actual numbers. So I think the data from the program will certainly help us out in narrowing some of that piece down. I'm in agreement also there with a user pay or whatever that licensing fee may be to set it up. But the biggest thing we need to have is the community engagement. And we have 3 folks here, delegations here today. They're all willing to hopefully help out and make it a smooth process and we can get more people involved. I think we got to have that communication to move this forward and make it a positive. It's got to be a positive for everybody. So there is some work to do, and I understand there's a bit of concern about spending the money, but I think we're going to have to be able to make this work to be start. We can set our own rules once we get things established and know where we're at, and we can change things as we need to change them. But again, we're speculating on what's out there. We're not even sure what's there. So that's just all I wanted to comment on that. Anybody else? All right, we're all good. So we've had some good discussion around this. So I want to call for a vote on this now. All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Colbert.
So we're doing this as a bundle because there are some within this motion I can agree with. There are some I'm not. So I'm being forced now to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there is no appetite to breaking it down, I'll be calling for a recorded vote, please.
Oh, Mayor Colburn or Mayor Carleton.
I would suggest it's not really an issue to break it down, but are we going to break it down 7 ways? Because that was there. Sorry, I think there's 8. Are we going to break it into 8 or are we being picky about which ones were? I think we need to understand better what you're asking for.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Pringle. I'm happy to pull the nuisance bylaw from this because I think that's been a long time coming, and I'm happy just to pull that one. And I don't feel like I need a recorded vote on that one, but I'm still asking for a recorded vote as we bundle the rest. Thank you.
Looking to the clerk here for some direction.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess my suggestion would be that you do have the ability to break the motion apart. I suppose. I mean, I would recommend that you have a little bit more discussion about, which items you would like to consider separately, and then maybe we can break the motion apart that way so we consider the items that we all agree with, and then have discussion about the items that we don't agree with.
Mayor Carleton.
So what I'm hearing from Councillor Coburn is she's okay with everything being together except that we take the creation of the nuisance bylaw out of there. So if we have an amendment that we remove that to vote on it separately, and then we vote on the remaining items together. Can we do it that way? I too have been in this position where at times I want to vote no to one and yes to everything else, and it's all bundled, so it makes it difficult.
The clerk here for direction. You're just going to pick up.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Chair. My recommendation would be that we put an amendment on the floor to remove the nuisance bylaw from the nuisance bylaw line from the motion as presented. And then council could consider that bundle, and then council may put a motion on the floor regarding the nuisance bylaw after we've considered the bundle motion.
Any comments to that? Okay, that's good. We'll go with that then.
So we need a mover and a seconder to amend that motion to remove the line, and then you need to vote on the amendment.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Coburn, Councillor Shouldice. All those in favor? Now we got to go back to the original. Going back to the original bylaw, need a mover and a seconder for that also. Seconder. Okay, so call the vote on the amended. Right. Councillor Coburn.
I'm sorry, Chair Pringle, I'm not sure what now I'm voting on. Which aspect of the amended motion is on the floor right now for voting?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the bundle, everything but the nuisance bylaw is now the original motion because we've amended it to remove that line.
Thank you, and this is the one I'm calling for a recorded vote on.
All right, thank you. Now, do you call the vote? Do you call them through their card? Okay.
Apologies, my computer is being a little bit slow. So when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Isaac Shouldice. Councillor Tobin Day.
You let her know.
You're muted, Tobin.
May I just clarify one more time? This particular vote is for purchasing the software and hiring a bylaw officer, et cetera, et cetera.
It is for everything except the line about
Except-
the nuisance bylaw.
I vote for accepting the bylaw. Or sorry, I vote for this motion.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
Opposed?
Mayor Sue Carlton.
Or
And Deputy Mayor Pringle.
For.
That carries.
Thank you, clerk there. All right, we got that through. So we're moving on here. We're at unfinished business. Oh, we'll go back to this. Sorry. All right. Oh, it's confusing. All right. So going back to the nuisance bylaw, we need a vote for when you move over and seconder. We've got that already. Mover and seconder has been done. Okay. Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Coburn and Mayor Carlton. And I'll call the vote. All those in favor. And that is carried. Moving on, unfinished business. We have nil. New business. We have nil. Notice of motion. Does any member have a notice of motion they wish to bring forward at this time? You see nothing. All right, we're going to move into closed session here at 6:35. Recommendation after the meeting. I can read it now.
Yeah.
Read the recommendation. Okay. But Council of Township of Georgian Bluffs moved into closed session at 6:34 p.m. in the council chambers with the CEO, acting clerk, remaining in the room to discuss minutes of previous closed session meetings, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to the any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, potential property negotiation in the former township of Keppel. And I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Colburn and Councillor Scholdice. Call the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving to closed session.
I tried to come back. I hit the leave too soon. Then I tried to come back and I couldn't get there.
Do you want to ask him about his availability?
Oh,
Okay, we're live.
do you want to talk about April?
April 24th.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
You hear me?
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
I'm just
April
going-
24th, you available, Ryan?
I'm just going to my work calendar here. Just hang tight. Sorry, I left that last week. I tried to stick with it. Are we saying no to the 13th?
Yes.
The 13th.
24th is the date.
Yeah, 13th won't work for me. But it doesn't matter. The 24th works for me. What time are we talking about?
5.
Yes, that works for me. I'll put it in here right now.
Perfect. We're good to go there, Carly? We're good. All right. Committee moved into closed session to discuss matters under the open meeting exemption K of section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001. As a result of closed session discussion, direction was provided to staff. The date of our next meeting is March the 22nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. If there is no other business, we will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Thompson and Councillor Schuldice. And I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. We'll see you all on the 22nd.
Have a good night,
Yep.
everybody.
Night,
See you
everyone.
later.
Good night, everyone.